Ethan, open the door. You can't just lock me out of my own life. Vanessa's voice slams into my ears like a hurricane tearing through glass. She's pounding on my door, fists echoing down the hall of my Austin apartment building. Mascara streaking black rivers across her cheeks. Inside, I'm leaning against the door phone, trembling in my hand. The glow of the screen reflects a clip that's been playing on loop. Vanessa's voice, crystal clear, dripping with defiance. A man who can't handle a fearless woman isn't a real man. I stare at her frozen smile in that video. Her hair-perfect lips painted in that bold crimson she loves. My chest tightens rage, fighting exhaustion, my heartbeat thudding like a war drum. My name's Ethan Miller, 34 years old, Director of Supply Chain Operations for Titan Retail Logistics here in Austin, Texas. I make good money, about 120 grand a year. I thought I had my life figured out, a career I'd fought tooth and nail for, friends who respect me, a future that finally seemed stable. Then Vanessa Brooks exploded into my world like a spark on dry brush. Vanessa, 29, fiery, beautiful, a PR consultant who's always between projects. Her income floats somewhere around $35,000 to $40,000 a year, sometimes less depending on the gigs she picks up. She rents a sleek studio in Midtown, all white walls and neon accents, a place she calls her sanctuary. Though for the past few months she's barely slept there. At first, Vanessa seemed like the perfect antidote to the routine my life had become. She was pure adrenaline. That smile. It could talk me into jumping off a rooftop, convinced I'd grow wings halfway down. We met at a logistics industry mixer last year, me there out of obligation, Vanessa, on a PR contract for one of the event sponsors. She was standing by the bar arguing passionately with a vendor about supply chain crisis, communication, gesturing with her wine glass like a general commanding troops. I couldn't help it. I was hooked. We started dating. Slowly at first, lunches, texts, late-night calls. But somewhere around month 8, Vanessa was here at my place nearly every night, half her closet creeping into my drawers, makeup spilling over my bathroom counter. She kept her own leash just in case, she'd say, with a shrug. I respected that. Independence is attractive as hell, until it starts looking a whole lot like secrecy. And that's the thing with Vanessa. She's magnetic, sure, but there's a storm forever swirling just beneath her surface. Lately, she's been talking a lot about freedom, posting endless empowerment quotes, sharing reels that basically scream that any man who tries to set boundaries is insecure, weak, not real. Tonight should have been just another Thursday. I was planning on grabbing Thai takeout, crashing on the couch, and maybe coaxing Vanessa into watching that new documentary on port congestion. Yeah, thrilling, I know. Instead, she's out there screaming my name, demanding to be let back into a life she's already blown to pieces. My thumb hovers over the pause button as her voice crackles again from the phone. A man who can't handle a fearless woman isn't a real man. My jaw clenches. Well, Vanessa, tonight you're about to find out what a real man actually does when he finally decides he's done handling your brand of fearless. I guess it's funny how a single person can flip your life upside down without even trying. Before Vanessa, I thought I understood women. I thought I understood relationships. I've always been the steady guy. The guy who shows up, who plans ahead, who has a 5-year spreadsheet for everything. Vacations, retirement, groceries. My friends call me Mr. Logistics for a reason. I grew up in Houston, blue-collar family. My dad ran a small trucking company hauling freight between Texas and Louisiana. Mom worked the front office, juggling paperwork and phone calls. I learned early that love is partly about loyalty and partly about handling the messy details nobody wants to talk about. When I landed my job in Austin as Director of Supply Chain for Titan Retail Logistics, it felt like arriving. 6-figure salary, a spacious apartment downtown with skyline views. Life finally seemed manageable, predictable, safe, until I met Vanessa Brooks. Vanessa. She was like a spark plug in human form, 29 years old. PR consultant with a smile that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Tall, dark hair always falling over one eye, the kind of woman who makes you lean closer because you're sure she's about to share a secret. She grew up in Dallas. Middle-class family, her dad managed an electronics store, her mom taught high school English. Vanessa was the kid who volunteered to read Shakespeare out loud, who tried out for every talent show. Ambition practically leaked out of her pores, but it's her charisma that hooks people. She can talk circles around any room, a natural storyteller, persuasive as hell. Whether she's pitching a client or arguing over who should pay the bar tab, she freelances in PR, works with tech startups, influencers, sometimes even local politicians. It sounds glamorous, until you realize PR gigs come and go. Some months she'd pull in $5,000, other months, barely scrape together rent. Yet she wears independence like a badge of honor, keeps her own place, insists she'll never depend on a man. I admired that. At first, our story kicked off at that industry mixer last year. Titan was sponsoring part of the event, so I was stuck making small talk over cheap hors d'oeuvres. I spotted Vanessa mid-argument with a vendor, her eyes flashing like neon lights. I was done for. We exchanged numbers, met up for coffee the next week. One coffee turned into dinner, then drinks, then whole weekends together. She was funny, spontaneous. She'd drag me to pop-up art shows, indie concerts in East Austin, or midnight taco runs on 6th Street. Life with her felt electric. By month 3, she was leaving a toothbrush at my place. By month 5, half her wardrobe seemed to live in my closet. By month 8, it was like we were playing house, though she kept her midtown studio just in case. She'd joke about it. "Ethan, a woman's gotta keep her options open, right?" I'd laugh it off, because I wanted to believe it was harmless. But as time went on, I started noticing cracks. Vanessa was fiercely private about her phone. She'd tilt the screen away when texts came in. She'd vanish for hours on meetings that left her coming home smelling like craft whiskey. Whenever I tried to talk about it, she'd smile, touch my face, and say, "Oh, babe, don't be so paranoid. You're not one of those jealous guys, are you?" And damn it, I didn't want to be, because the truth is, my last serious relationship ended because she said I was too controlling, too rigid. So I promised myself I'd never be that guy again. I wanted to trust Vanessa. I wanted to believe love was stronger than suspicion. But behind her playful jokes, there was always this edge, like she was testing how far she could push before I'd finally push back. And as I'd soon learn, Vanessa Brooks never did anything halfway. The thing about red flags, they don't always show up waving like a warning sign. Sometimes they're quiet, almost invisible, until you look back and realize they'd been there all along. At first it was little things. Vanessa would make plans without mentioning them. I'd come home ready for dinner, only to find a text at 7:15 p.m. "Out with friends, don't wait up." Or she'd vanish for an entire Saturday, and when I'd ask where she'd been, she'd laugh like I'd told a joke. "Ethan, I don't have to report every minute of my life. I'm not on a leash." It wasn't that I wanted her to check in like a teenager past curfew. I just thought, when you're living like a couple, you keep each other in the loop. But with Vanessa, everything was a boundary. Everything was a fight for independence. Then came the just friends guys. Vanessa's circle was full of men, photographers, marketing execs, influencers. She'd talk about them like brothers. But I started noticing the way some of them lingered in her Instagram comments. Fire emojis, heart eyes. One night she posted a boomerang of herself clinking glasses at a rooftop bar. 4 guys crowded around her, all grinning. The caption read, "Strong women thrive with strong friends." I stared at that photo for 10 minutes, counting the number of hands touching her back. When I asked about it, she rolled her eyes. "Seriously, Ethan, you're being ridiculous. These guys are my crew, you know that." But I didn't know that. Not really. Sometimes she'd come home with perfume on her clothes that wasn't hers. A a sweet, musky scent I'd never smelled on her before. I'd ask where she'd been. She'd smirk. Networking. You'd be bored to death. One Saturday, she was gone from noon till after midnight. When she finally answered her phone, her voice was distant. Just having drinks with some friends. Chill out. Chill out. That was her favorite line when she didn't want to answer questions. The more I noticed, the less I could sleep at night. Then the social media posts started ramping up. Vanessa would share endless reels about boss women never apologizing men who can't handle your shine. Her captions grew sharper, like they were written for an audience, instead of just being random quotes. A woman who's truly independent doesn't explain her choices to insecure men. I'd read that and my stomach would twist, because some days it felt like she was talking about me. But whenever I tried to bring it up, "You're reading too much into it. It's just social media. Don't be that guy." And maybe I would have believed her, if it weren't for the fact that every time she said it, there was this flicker in her eyes. A flicker that said she was daring me to push back. Then came Adrian Carter. Vanessa had mentioned him once or twice when we first started dating, just a casual, "Oh, my ex Adrian and I are still friends. No big deal." Back then, I didn't think twice. Plenty of people stay friends with exes, especially when they swear the romance is ancient history. But everything changed the day Adrian moved back to Austin. He'd been in Seattle the past 5 years working in tech, out of sight, out of mind, until he took a job as a creative director at a big digital marketing firm downtown. Suddenly, he was back in Vanessa's orbit, like a planet pulled by gravity. At first, it was little updates. "Hey, Adrian's back in town. We're grabbing coffee to catch up." I tried to play it cool. "That's great. I guess." She flashed me that dazzling smile. "Ethan, it's just coffee. We dated in college. We're grown-ups now." So I swallowed the knot in my throat and nodded, because the last thing I wanted was to look like a jealous teenager. But coffee turned into lunch meetings, then happy hours, then phone calls that stretched past midnight. One night, Vanessa was in my living room, curled up on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, laughing so hard tears rolled down her face. When she finally hung up, I asked as lightly as I could, "So, you and Adrian must have a lot to talk about." She raised an eyebrow, instantly defensive. "Are you seriously interrogating me right now?" It was a conversation, Ethan, not a secret mission. I forced a laugh, but something inside me twisted. A few days later, I saw a picture of her and Adrian on Instagram. She'd tagged him. They were sitting side by side at a trendy cafe, leaning close, grinning at the camera. His arm was draped casually around her shoulders. The caption read, "When friendships survive every season of life, you know it's real." I stared at that picture so long my coffee went cold. When I asked her about it, Vanessa let out a sharp laugh. "God, Ethan, don't you trust me at all? Real relationships don't come with interrogation rooms." She kept using that word, trust, as if me wanting to know why her ex-boyfriend's arm was around her wasn't normal. But it didn't stop there. Texts from Adrian popped up at 2 a.m. Vanessa would silence her phone, but check it constantly. "He's just going through some stuff. He needs someone to talk to." Her tone made it sound noble, like she was rescuing a drowning friend. One night I was brushing my teeth when I heard her in the bedroom whispering into her phone. Her voice low, soft, the kind of voice you use when secrets feel too big to speak aloud. When she saw me standing in the doorway, she snapped the call off so fast it was like flipping a light switch. "What? Are you spying on me now?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "No, I just came in to say goodnight." Her eyes turned hard. "Ethan, you're suffocating me. You're turning into exactly the kind of man I've always promised myself I'd never end up with." She threw her phone onto the dresser, storming past me like I wasn't even there. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The sound of her soft breathing beside me felt like a lie, because no matter how many times she swore nothing was going on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Adrian was more than just a ghost from her past. And worse, that Vanessa wanted me to be the villain in this story. She wanted me to lose my cool, to prove her right about men who can't handle a fearless woman. And part of me wondered if I already was, It all came crashing down over a dinner that was supposed to be ordinary. Vanessa and I were sitting at our usual spot, a little Italian place near my building. She was twirling linguine around her fork eyes, darting to her phone every few minutes. I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend we were just another couple enjoying a night out. But halfway through my glass of Merlot, she set her fork down, took a deep breath and said, "So, Adrian invited me to a music festival in Houston next weekend." I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. "Okay, are we going?" She blinked. "No, just me. He got 2 tickets months ago. It's kind of our thing. We always used to hit this festival together in college." My fork dropped into my plate. "Vanessa, you're telling me you're going to a weekend festival with your ex, without me?" She rolled her eyes so hard I could practically hear them scrape the ceiling. "Ethan, it's just a music festival. I'm not sleeping with him." I swallowed hard. "Where are you staying?" "Adrian's got a place up there. His aunt owns a condo near the venue." It makes sense. Hotels are ridiculously expensive during festival season. I stared at her, trying to read her face, hoping to find even a flicker of guilt. There was none. "So, you're spending an entire weekend at your ex's condo? Just the two of you?" She let out a short laugh. "God, you sound so insecure right now. You know what your problem is, Ethan. You can't handle a woman who's independent. You think being in a relationship means you get to dictate my friends, my time, my life." I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. "It's not about dictating. It's about respect, about boundaries." She snorted. "Boundaries, please. This is why women can't be honest with men. The minute we try to keep friendships alive, suddenly we're sluts or liars." People at the tables around us were starting to glance over, sensing the tension rolling off our booth like static electricity. I lowered my voice. "I'm not calling you anything. I'm saying it's not okay for someone in a committed relationship to spend a romantic weekend with their ex." She leaned back, arms crossed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Then maybe you're not ready for a relationship with a woman like me." The waiter dropped off the check, eyes darting between us like he was bracing for a bar fight. On the walk back to my place, neither of us said a word. Her heels clicked sharply on the pavement. My fists were stuffed deep in my pockets. When we reached my building, she stopped under the glow of the streetlight, staring at me like she was waiting for an ultimatum. "I'm going, Ethan, and I hope you use this time to think about whether you really want to be with someone who lives life on her own terms." She kissed my cheek, just a quick clinical press of lips, and turned away. The next morning, I woke up to see her post on Instagram. A selfie, perfect makeup, confident smirk. The caption screamed, "A woman who can't live her truth for fear of losing a man has already lost herself." Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, friends chiming in. "Yes, Queen. Don't let any man dim your light. He's just intimidated by your power." I scrolled through them, all my thumb trembling, rage bubbling under my skin. She didn't just cross a line. She set it on fire, then filmed it for social media. By Friday afternoon, she was packing her overnight bag in my bedroom. Lip gloss, hairbrush, perfume, tossing it all in like this was any other trip. I stood by the door, arms crossed. "Vanessa, if you go, don't expect to come back like nothing happened." She zipped up her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and gave me a look that was equal parts pity and disdain. "I'll definitely be thinking about our relationship, Ethan. Maybe you should too." And just like that, she walked out my door, leaving nothing behind but silence and the echo of her heels fading down the hallway. And for the first time since I met Vanessa Brooks, I realized I might be about to lose everything I thought I loved. But maybe, just maybe, I was ready to let it go. The door clicked shut behind her, and the quiet was deafening. I stood in my living room, staring at the empty space she'd left behind, her perfume still hanging in the air like a ghost. For the first few minutes, I just stood there, waiting for the anger to cool off, telling myself I was overreacting, that she'd come home Sunday and we'd talk it out. But the longer I stared at the closed door, the more something inside me twisted tight, until it snapped. I walked into the bedroom, opened the closet. Half the hangers held Vanessa's clothes, sparkly dresses, blazers for client meetings, half-worn denim jackets with the sleeves rolled up. The sight of it made my skin crawl. I pulled out a suitcase from under the bed. One by one, I folded her things and packed them away. Dresses, shoes, stacks of magazines she'd left on my nightstand. Her expensive makeup, that stupid pink hairdryer. I took photos of everything just in case she tried to claim I'd trashed her stuff. The whole time her voice echoed in my head. A man who can't handle a fearless woman isn't a real man. Bullshit. By noon, the apartment looked almost sterile, like she'd never been there at all. I loaded the boxes into my car and drove to her building in Midtown. I parked out front and stacked everything neatly by her apartment door. Then I pulled out a sheet of paper and wrote a note, my hand shaking with adrenaline. Vanessa, you're right. A fearless woman doesn't need a man who can't handle her independence. I respect that. So I'm stepping out of your way. Your belongings are safe and accounted for. I trust a fearless woman like you will handle the rest, including paying your own rent. Ethan, I left the note on top of the boxes and walked away without looking back. That night I changed the locks on my apartment. Sunday evening rolled around like a storm cloud. I knew exactly when she'd show up around 8, like clockwork. And sure enough, I heard the elevator ding outside my hallway. A knock rattled the door. Ethan, open up. We need to talk. I pulled the door open just enough to look at her, but not enough to let her in. She stood there in ripped jeans and a denim jacket, hair still smelling faintly of festival dust and campfire smoke. Her eyes flicked over my face, searching for softness. Hey, can we go inside? We're fine right here. Her smile wobbled. Come on, don't be like this. Vanessa, I did a lot of thinking while you were gone. She crossed her arms, voice sharp. Good. So can we move past this now? We can move past this relationship. Yes. Her expression shifted from irritation to shock, like someone had slapped her. What are you talking about? You're breaking up with me over a weekend. I'm ending it because you put another man, your ex, no less, above our relationship. And because you mocked me publicly for having boundaries. She shook her head, fast hair whipping over her shoulders. That post wasn't even about you, Ethan. It was just me venting. I pulled out my phone and held up the screenshot. You posted this 6 hours after I told you I wasn't okay with you going away for the weekend. Who else was it about? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. It was bad timing, okay? But it doesn't mean we have to break up. We've got 10 months invested in this. I'm not throwing away 10 months. I'm choosing not to throw away the next 10 years on someone who can't respect me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Ethan, I love you. Please, let's fix this. Love doesn't mean much if there's no respect. Your stuff is at your apartment. Your key won't work here anymore. Her eyes filled with tears. Where am I supposed to go? That's up to you. Good thing you kept your own place. Right. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. This is insane. You're completely overreacting. No, Vanessa. This is me handling a fearless woman by letting her be fearless on her own. I closed the door in her face. Her muffled sobs followed me down the hallway as I locked the deadbolt. My heart pounding, my breath shaky, and a cold certainty settling deep in my bones. Whatever else came next. I was done letting Vanessa Brooks decide who I was supposed to be. The days that followed felt like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. On Monday morning, I walked into the Titan office and felt eyes on me before I'd even reached my desk. People pretending to be busy on their computers, others whispering as I passed. By lunch, I knew why. Vanessa had gone live on Instagram late Sunday night. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor of her Midtown studio, still wearing her denim jacket. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, eyes swollen from crying. Her voice trembled as she spoke into the camera. So, I guess I'm here to talk about what happens when you love a man who turns out to be controlling and manipulative and who can't handle you living your truth. I watched that video in the break room with my coffee growing cold in my hand. My chest tightened with every word. I thought Ethan was different. I thought he supported my independence. But he changed the locks on me, threw me out because I refused to cut ties with my friends, because I wouldn't let him dictate where I could go. or who I could see. Hundreds of people were watching her live. Hearts floating up the screen, comments pouring in. Men are trash. You deserve better, queen. He's just intimidated by your power. I couldn't look away. She wiped her eyes and sniffled. If you're in a relationship where someone tries to make you choose between your freedom and their ego, choose yourself. By the time the video ended, Vanessa's story had spread through our entire friend circle and apparently half the Austin social media scene. My phone exploded with messages, some from mutual friends. Hey man, what's going on? Vanessa's saying crazy stuff. Others were pure venom. You're a controlling piece of shit. Real men don't police women's friendships. Hope your tiny ego enjoys being single. I stared at my screen, pulse pounding. That afternoon, Vanessa's friends started sliding into my DMs. Some were polite but cold. Others unleashed hell. She deserves so much better than a jealous psycho like you. I screenshot everything, just in case. By Tuesday, I was getting side eyes from people at work. Even my boss pulled me aside. Ethan, I'm not asking for details. Just be careful how this looks. We've got clients who pay attention to social media. It was humiliating. I'd spent my whole career building a reputation for being level-headed, steady professional. Now, thanks to Vanessa's viral sob story, people were looking at me like I was some controlling monster. Meanwhile, Vanessa kept posting cryptic quotes. A strong woman doesn't fear walking alone. Don't shrink to make insecure men feel tall. Every post got hundreds of likes, waves of yes, queen comments. It was like she was running a campaign. But behind the scenes, cracks started showing. One mutual friend texted me. Vanessa called me last night crying. Says she can't afford her rent now that she's not living with you. Another messaged, dude, she's losing clients. A couple brands dropped her because they don't want the drama. I'd feel a twinge of guilt, until I remembered how she'd plastered my personal life all over Instagram, how she'd twisted reality into some performance piece about male insecurity. Tuesday night she showed up outside Titan during my lunch hour. Security called me downstairs, said there was a woman insisting she needed to see me. I stepped into the lobby, and there she was, Vanessa, dark circles under her eyes, lips trembling, voice soft and raw. Ethan, can we please talk? This has gone too far. I kept my arms crossed. You went live on Instagram and called me manipulative. You made me look like a monster to half the city. What's left to talk about? She blinked fast, tears threatening. I was emotional. I didn't mean for it to get so big. Vanessa, you made your choice. You wanted independence. Now you've got it. Her face crumpled. I'm losing clients, Ethan. People are backing away from me. This is all spiraling out of control. That's not my problem anymore. Please, I'll take the post down. I'll tell people it was a misunderstanding. No. You don't get to set fire to my life and then ask me to help you put it out. She tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. Goodbye, Vanessa. Security hovered nearby, watching as she finally turned and walked out into the sunlit street, wiping her face with the back of her hand. And as I stood there watching her go, I felt the faintest spark of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. For a few days it seemed like the storm might finally die down. Vanessa went quiet online. No new posts, no cryptic quotes, no tearful videos. I let myself hope she'd moved on, that maybe we'd both just fade from each other's lives and start over clean. But silence has a way of hiding the next explosion. Thursday morning, I was at my desk at Titan trying to focus on a quarterly logistics report when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Texts, DMs, missed calls. Bro, have you seen the video? Is this real? Dude. Vanessa is trending. My stomach turned cold. I clicked the link someone sent me. A video posted to some gossip page on Instagram, grainy, shaky footage from the Houston festival. Vanessa and Adrian, standing under neon lights, music thundering in the background, his hands gripping her hips, hers tangled in his hair. And then, she kissed him. Not a friendly peck. A full-on eyes-closed, fingers in his hair kind of kiss. The caption under the video screamed, "So much for just friends." Vanessa Brooks spotted locking lips with ex-Adrian Carter at H-Town Live Fest. My ears roared as the comments loaded faster than I could read them. Whoa, wasn't she crying about her boyfriend being controlling? Guess Ethan wasn't the problem after all. That's messy as hell. My phone blew up with calls from friends, some sounding pissed, others sounding smug like they just won a bet. I closed my laptop and just sat there, hands shaking, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Because in that moment, everything clicked into place. Vanessa's secrecy, the midnight texts, the guilt-tripping lectures about trust. It wasn't about freedom. It was about keeping me around while she kept one foot in the past. I thought back to all those nights she'd disappeared, all those arguments where she'd called me insecure. And suddenly, I didn't feel crazy anymore. Meanwhile, Vanessa's world started caving in. Brands that once hired her for PR gigs started pulling out. One posted a polite statement. "We wish Vanessa Brooks the best, but we value transparency and integrity in our brand partnerships." Mutual friends texted me. "She's losing clients left and right, man." Vanessa called me bawling. Says she can't cover her rent. Even people who'd cheered her on were quietly backing away. Public support is easy until receipts start surfacing. Friday afternoon, Vanessa showed up at Titan again. Security buzzed me, looking apologetic. I stepped into the lobby. She was there, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her eyes were red mascara smudged. "Ethan, please, I need to explain." I crossed my arms. "Explain what that video explains everything." It wasn't what it looked like. I was drunk. Adrian kissed me first. You kissed him back. I made a mistake. I was confused. I missed how we used to be. While still living with me, posting about how I was insecure, her shoulders slumped. "I know how it looks, but you don't understand how much pressure I was under. I was trying to keep my image. I thought people would think I was weak if I stayed with you after you got so possessive. I wasn't possessive, Vanessa. I just wasn't okay with you having a secret second relationship while living in my apartment." She started crying, an earnest voice cracking. "Ethan, I'm losing everything. My apartment, my business. I can't even go online without people calling me a liar. I'm sorry you're hurting, but I'm not your solution. Can we at least talk? Maybe try again?" I took a breath, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. "Vanessa, you wanted freedom. You got it. And freedom means living with the consequences of your choices." She wiped her eyes, mascara streaking across her skin like black tears. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I thought I could handle everything on my own. Sometimes independence isn't about handling everything alone. It's about knowing when to stop hurting people who care about you." She stared at me, silent, the fight draining out of her. "So that's it," she whispered. "That's it." For a moment I thought she'd argue, that she'd launch into another speech about how I'd never really known her. But she just turned away, pushing open the glass doors, stepping into the bright Texas sunlight, leaving me standing in the lobby, breathing in air that felt cleaner than it had in months. After Vanessa disappeared into the sunlight that day, it was like someone finally turned off the chaos in my life. The next few weeks were quiet, almost eerily so. Word spread fast in our circles about the video from Houston. People who'd once screamed "Yes, Queen" on Vanessa's posts were suddenly nowhere to be found. The support evaporated as quickly as it had come. Vanessa tried to do damage control online, posting long captions about how nobody's perfect and how women should be allowed to make mistakes without being crucified. But the comments were different now. Less fire emojis, more side-eye and polite silence. Her client list shrank overnight. A couple of bigger tech brands released polite statements about reevaluating partnerships. Her reputation, the thing she'd worked so hard to build, cracked like glass under a hammer. 3 weeks later, I heard she broke her lease on her Midtown apartment. Couldn't cover rent without splitting costs. Rumor was she moved back to Dallas to stay with her parents. It hit me in a weird way, because for almost a year, I'd been preparing my life for her to be in it forever. And now, she was gone, like she'd never existed, except in echoes of old perfume and half-erased pictures on my phone. Adrian. He went radio silent after the video dropped, deleted half his socials. A friend of a friend said he transferred to another branch of his company up in Denver. I doubt he and Vanessa kept in touch after all that. Funny how fast friends forever can vanish when the spotlight hits the truth. As for me, I stayed single for a while. I focused on work, on friends who'd stuck by me, on remembering who I was before everything got twisted into a circus. Then about 2 months later, I met Emily. She works in accounting for a different logistics company. Steady, calm, the kind of woman who doesn't turn disagreements into viral videos. The first time I told her the story about Vanessa, she just shook her head and said, "Independence doesn't mean testing how much crap someone will tolerate. It means standing on your own 2 feet financially and emotionally." I don't know if Emily and I are forever, but she makes me laugh and she makes me feel safe. That's enough for now. Sometimes I think about Vanessa. I wonder if she's okay, if she's learned anything from the wreckage we both crawled out of. But mostly, I just feel relief, because loving someone shouldn't mean twisting yourself into knots to prove you're man enough for their chaos. And letting go doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that independence isn't just a word you slap on an Instagram caption. Real independence is paying your own rent, covering your own bills, standing by your choices, and handling the fallout when those choices blow up in your face. It's not about running wild and calling it freedom. It's about having the strength to be honest, even when honesty is messy, even when it costs you something you think you can't live without. Because here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit love and boundaries can exist in the same room. Loving someone doesn't mean giving them a blank check to do whatever the hell they want. It means respecting each other enough to say, "This crosses a line for me." And if they can't handle that, if they call you weak or insecure or controlling because you've got standards, then maybe they were never strong enough for you in the first place. We live in a world where everyone's quick to shout toxic or manipulative whenever a relationship hits a bump. But not every boundary is toxic. Not every question is control. Sometimes, it's just the sign of someone who gives a damn about the relationship lasting longer than a highlight reel on social media. I wasted a lot of nights wondering if I'd been too rigid, too cautious, too scared to let Vanessa be who she wanted to be. But looking back, I wasn't scared. I was just hoping for respect. And respect is the one thing you can't negotiate, or beg for, or fake with pretty captions and filtered selfies. If someone's whole definition of independence depends on humiliating you in public, if they need the world's applause for every private decision they make, that's not freedom. That's insecurity wearing a crown. I've learned that the strongest thing you can do sometimes is leave. Not out of spite, not to punish anyone, but because peace is worth more than any relationship that asks you to betray yourself. And yeah, it hurts. It rips you open in places you didn't even know existed. But eventually the air tastes cleaner. The nights feel quieter. You remember who you are again. So if you're out there, stuck in a situation that keeps pulling you further away from yourself, I hope you find the courage to walk away. Because independence isn't just about refusing permission. It's about refusing to settle for love that comes with conditions you're not meant to carry. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to let someone go, so you can finally be free.